Okay, yesterday we're learning about names. So it's an interesting question that comes up nowadays, especially more than a few years ago. A baby is born in the hospital, and they want you to fill out the birth certificate. Now, a lot of times, if you don't fill it out then, before the baby goes home, then you have to go down to City Hall. It's a whole hassle in order to get the name on the birth certificate. So the question is, are you allowed to put the name on the birth certificate before you actually give them the name? So in Svarim it says you could do it. It's best not to verbally say the name, just write the name. So then you're not actually calling the name, you're just writing the name. So then that's what I tell people to do, that they should just write the name on the birth certificate and it's not an issue, because otherwise it becomes a very big hassle. And you're not calling the baby, you're saying what the baby's name will be. What?
Why do you want to give your baby a bris in the hospital without your permission?
You can sue them for malpractice.
What do? You give them
You have to do a toughest dam bris, but they can be sued for a lot of money. They cannot do a medical procedure without permission. It happened. A lot of things happened in all over the place. Okay. Now, otherwise it says you give a name after the bris, because then the oral is removed, the person is... Okay, now what happens if the bris won't be on time? So there's different opinions. This is not a case where the bris will be postponed for months. But what happens if whatever the bris won't be on time? So some people say you give it a name when the father gets an aliyah. Some people say it should be after 8 days. Some people say you should name him during 8 days. The minig ha'ilam, they bring down the custom of the world is you don't name a baby until after the bris, even if the bris is pushed off a little bit. But what happens, Tak, you have situations for various medical reasons that a child won't be able to have a bris for 6 months or so. Or whatever, maybe even longer sometimes. So then the custom is they wait at least a month and then they give it a name, even though they didn't have a bris yet, so they will give it a name. That's what a lot of people do. And that's the people could do. After a month, they usually try to wait at least a month and then they could give a name. What?
At that juncture, when you name the baby by Torah or?
And you can name it by the Torah if you want. It doesn't matter, really either way. As long as you start calling him the name, it doesn't matter. You could do it by the Torah, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
If the baby is sick and they postpone bringing it up, so they wait till he feels better, and then when they do bring it up, they give him name, or
yeah.
The name should be given.
No, I'm saying if it's very late, like months, then they'll just do the naming anyway. But they can write, they can just change the text. Instead of V'Karish maybe Yisrael, you can write V'Karish maybe Yisrael. I mean, it's not just change the grammar to make it sound correct. What? What? So some people say you should wait at least until after the Pinyan Haben. No, at the Pinyan Haben. Let's say the bris will be after the Pinyan Haben. So they say you give a name at the Pinyan Haben. Then you have an interesting shaila. What happens if a kid needs a Pinyan Haben, and his bris is pushed off until the same day as the Pinyan Haben? In other words, the bris is able to be done at the 31st day. So then shaila is halacha, what do you do first? Because right now the mitzvah is to do the Pinyan Haben, so mitzvah bizmana. So the whole discussion halacha, if I'm not mistaken, I think the minig lepel is you do the bris first. But it's in halacha, it's different opinions about it. Okay, next. Girl, we said the different customs. Our custom is we do it as soon as possible. Okay, now, who has the rights to the name? We started discussing this, but we didn't get into it. Who has the rights to the name? And also, let's go into another thing, interesting thing. Do you name after living people or not? So in the Sephardic community, they do name after living people. In fact, they name after, even then, it's brought down in Poskim that even the Sephardic people that name after a living person should only be a grandfather, not a father. You know, they shouldn't have a father and son the same name, a grandson and a grandfather. That's what they Poskim write, even according to the Sephardic tradition. But in the Ashkenazi communities, you don't. We don't name a baby after a living person. Now, there's certain like exceptions to the rule. Once had a case, an Ashkenazi Chabad family, in fact, the grandfather was actually a little Sephardic, and the person had a baby, and the grandfather asked, you should name him the same name he has. He didn't know what to do. Lepoil, I told him he could do it, he should do it because the mitzvah kibbutz Av, whatever, he could do it. And I think they even added a different name also, an additional, and then for sure it's not a problem. Okay, but anyway, who has the rights to the first name? Is it the father or the mother? So, poskim bring down different opinions. A lot of poskim say the minig is the father gets the right to the first name, then the mother, then the father, then the mother, then the father. Other poskim, and this is what we said, the Rebbe brings down, the Daskerim Balatesis, who else is there, the Radak, Cheskuni, the Alshich, they bring a proof from Yehuda and Tomer's story over there, that it says, Vayikra Shmei and then it says, Vatikra Shmei Oinan. So Yehuda named the first baby, and then it says, Bashua named the second baby. So from there they bring down that is a proof that the father goes. And the Ramban says it's shtusim what they're saying, not necessarily that the concept is wrong, but not to interpret that in the Chumash. But the Rebbe does bring down the Daskerim Balatesis, and the Rebbe writes, therefore, if there's no accepted custom, the father should get the first baby. The universal minig today, the Rebbe didn't say it. The Rebbe said, if there's no minig, that's what you should do. The minig today is usually the mother gets the first name, unless if the father's relative just passed away and they want a name, then it's a different story. But generally speaking, the minig unofficially is that the mother gets the first name. Now, what happened? We mentioned yesterday. At the end, we mentioned that what happens? People have a baby, then they're divorced, and each one's naming a different name. So halachically, which name stays? So poskim write that the name the father gives stays. That's what they write. He says, "In kolachem yahirim b'fnei mikadeshem bli das echad." The other one named the baby without another name. The father's name stays, and he brings down from Bitzchazuta, whatever. Okay. Bottom line is then there will be the father's name. Now he says one thing is never to fight over. The parents shouldn't fight over the name because it's a sakana for the kid. Mamish is a dangerous thing. Spiritually, it's dangerous for the kid that they fight over the name. Now, it's another interesting thing. We said yesterday that the Rebbe never mixed in to names of kids. But they bring down, like, the Tzanzer, the Divrei Chaim, the Holy Tzanzer, the father of the Minchas Salazar. He used to name the brachos with the name. He used to do the brachos and the naming. And when he was naming the baby, he stopped at the name, he meditated for a second, and gave the name without even asking the father. He didn't do it without asking the father. He called him, and that was the name, and there was one of the miracles that they saw. But they say, the guys say that the reason for that is because these are tzaddikim, and they see the shirish of the neshama, and they know what the name should be. There was a story, there's a very prominent Rosh Yeshiva in Kfar Chabad, who was a Ger Tzedek from Australia. And when he became a Gemamish Chassidish, a very special Jew, a very holy Jew. And he was a Ger from Australia. And when he became a Ger, he took a certain name. He usually took Avram or whatever the name was. And he went into the Rebbe for Yechidus, and the Rebbe changed his name to Shneir Zalman.
What name?
The Rebbe told him to change his name to Shneir Zalman. Shneir Zalman. Now, what's another interesting thing is, last names in Torah don't mean anything. But there's a famous story with Rabbi Yadin Steinsaltz, who's a Chabad, that's a Lubavitcher. The Rebbe, he was very close to the Rebbe, he used to go to Yechidus a lot. Anyway, the Rebbe told him that the name Steinsaltz is too much gevura. Stein Evan, Stein means a stone, and Zaltz is salt. So the Rebbe told him it's double levels of Gvura should change the name. The Rebbe didn't tell him what to change it to. But the Rebbe said, and it's interesting because it's a last name. Last names don't mean anything. But the Rebbe told me he should change his name. Lepel, eventually he picked Evan Yisrael. But he's still known as Rabbi Steinsalz, Adin Steinsalz. But if you ever see, actually changed his name to Evan Yisrael because the Rebbe told him to change his last name. But that's a Pella because last names, again, don't mean anything. Okay. Now they bring down another interesting point. If you look at the names, in the biblical names, they named babies based on happenings that happened then. Like, why did they call Adam? Adam Hashem called him because he came from the Adam. Chava, because she was Haim Kol Chai. They bring down a lot of examples of Gershom. Moshe Rabbeinu named the son Gershom, Ki Ger HaYisi Baris Nochriya. So they used to name it not after relatives. They would name it based on incidents, happenings that happened. Then they bring down, even in the days it stopped, in the days of Tanoim and Amiroim, they stopped naming based on incidents, because those people were holy, they knew the connection between the thing and the incident, but then they started naming after family members. They would name it after family members, and or after their rebbes.
It's like the people by the week of the parsha, for example, you have Yosef in that one.
Sometimes people, this is rather brought down in halacha. I mean, in Poskim, that, not in Shechonah, but there's in Poskim it says, let's say if somebody has a bris on Purim, they should name the baby Mordechai. It's brought down in halacha. That's a unique situation, like a day, by Chassidim, if somebody had a bris, Chavdala Tevis, they would maybe name the kid Shnei Zalman, or whatever. They didn't have to.
Rabbi, in Tanti Gemara, you don't see too much the neighborhood or Avot, Gemara that says this.
Generally speaking, the names you have in the Gemara are not used today at all. Rava, Abaye, Rav Chisda, Rav Huna, Rav Zera, I mean, your name's not used at all. Now, most of the Tanoic names, the Tanoim's names, you have Rav Meir, Rav Yesi, Rav Yehuda, Rav Shimon, Rabbi Akiva, I mean, those names are used much more. It's interesting the way the names evolved. You're not going to find a kid today called Abaye or Rava. I mean, you're not going to find it.
Is there any...
Huh? Reb Avin? Huh?
Is there any objection to
Is there any objection to name a kid like that? I'll tell you something, nowadays it's a different problem. All these people today are giving new modern Israeli names that don't exist as names in halacha. Okay? And B'chlal, the question is that actually a name? So halacha, if that's the name they name it, that's the name. There's a lot of the names you hear today. Huh? Huh? Ophir.
like Dori?
No, what? Give me some. No. No, whatever. There's a lot of boys' names and girls' names. They're naming up weird names. Huh? No, it's just like, what's wrong with normal names? That
Nimrod became a big name.
Who? Nimrod?
People are naming it.
He just said yesterday that the guy changed his name from Nimrod to Avram.
Because he was a keeper of halachic.
Nava, names are coming up, but then the question, how do you spell them? Because if they're Hebrew, they're spelled one way. If it's a Yiddish name, it's spelled a different way. To be continued.